Elliot Hughes with Fight Night Network, joined today by UFC bantamweight Nathan Fletcher ahead of his fight on UFC London, March 22nd. Nathan, how are you and how's training going so far?
I'm very good, Elliot. Thank you very much for having me on. Training's going great. The mood's high. We're excited. It's only 2 weeks away now, so yeah. The overall morale is pretty high at the minute.
Obviously, you're fighting Caolan Loughran, an opponent that you've not only fought before, but you've beat before years ago back on the amateur scene. What sort of confidence does that give you going into a rematch on a much bigger stage?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never actually had a rematch before in my career, so this will be my first one. Takeaways are obviously, we've gone against each other before competitively, and I came out on top. So I think in terms of who's got an advantage there in the rematch, it's me. But obviously, it's a very different fight to what took place last time. We've both evolved. It's a much bigger stage. The first time we fought was in some pub or some leisure centre in Belfast somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And now we're fighting in the O2 Arena in London. So it's pretty cool actually to see our journeys through the sport and how we're meeting up again now at the highest level. And I'm very excited for it.
Is there anything tactically or strategically that you can actually take from that being so long ago, or is it more of a mental edge, you think?
Um, I don't. Yeah, tactically, not really. I think because our skill sets have changed quite a lot. I think if you watch that fight, it was a very grappling heavy fight, and I won a decision, and I'd like a big advantage in the grappling there. I don't think that's changed too much. I still feel I'm the better grappler. So you could say, tactically, I'm taking that from it that I was able to out grapple him back then, and I feel as though I'll definitely be able to do the same now. But um, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot higher stakes. Completely different matchup today than what it was in 2018 as amateurs. But overall, I think if I can take anything away from it, it's confidence that I've already beaten. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm taking that in with me.
Would it be fair to assume then that the game plan, while watching your fights, strangled 7 out of 9 wins? Would it be fair to assume that the game plan would be something similar?
I mean, yeah, every time I get in there, I'm pretty much looking to strangle someone. I want to try and finish all my fights. Do you know what I mean? So it's the easiest path to victory for me tends to be through submitting people. I don't see it going much differently this time, but you never know. Every time I get in there, you kind of take a fight for how it comes to you. We obviously plan things and there's game plans and stuff. We break down our opponent, but um, anything can happen in there. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be ready to respond and be creative on the fly. And I just think I've got a pretty good style of finding the back and getting that choking, and I'm a good finisher. I'm able, 9 times out of 10, literally, when I get in there and get on someone's back, I'm able to choke them. So I wouldn't be too surprised if that's how this fight went down.
On your debut from a spectator's point of view, it looked like maybe the first couple of minutes it took you to settle in with your opponent hitting a couple of sweeps, but once you did, you looked, as I say, settled and you dominated the fight really. How did you feel making the UFC walk for the first time, even though it was in the UFC Apex?
It was good. Yeah, I felt good to be honest. I felt confident. It felt like any other day, really. Obviously, it is different because the UFC ban is attached to it, and I suppose it's slightly higher stakes, but it's still just fighting in the cage. Do you know what I mean? I've done that enough times now. I feel like for me, it's always just competition, whether it's amateur fights in pubs in Belfast or if it's UFC fights. Do you know what I mean? It's competition between me and another man, and I've done that enough times. I feel I've got the right strategy to go in calm, cool, collected, and get the job done. So I felt good. Yeah, the first round, that was actually how I expected it to go. I knew it was going to be a little bit chaotic because my opponent was just like that. He was very scrambly, wriggly. He was aggressive, good striker, and a little bit bigger than me as well. That was at featherweight, the debut, and obviously I'm a natural bantamweight, so I was prepared for a little bit of awkwardness and like him using a bit of explosive strength and stuff to muscle his way out of positions, which is kind of where I ended up getting swept. But yeah, I anticipated that, and then apart from getting my nose busted up by that elbow, everything went according to plan.
Is your nose okay now? Is there a little cut on there now?
Yeah, it's fine. This is a little scrape. This is just surface wound from grappling. It's a bit of mat burn, I think. So, but it's all good. Don't worry.
That's good. Good to hear. Obviously, the debut was in the Apex, this time in your home country. sold out arena. Is that something that you look forward to? Is that going to play any difference for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know. This is the biggest stage I've fought on. I don't imagine that the crowd is gonna. I think if anything, it'll affect me positively. Do you know what I mean? I've always drawn energy from big crowds. When I fought in Manchester and stuff on Cage Warriors, and I had a good few hundred people there supporting me, I've always used that as fuel to perform better. I think so. I feel like the higher pressure the stakes are, and the more the atmosphere is, that tends to bode well for me. Um, but obviously, look, it's my first time doing it, so we don't know. I don't know how I'm going to react. That's why it's exciting. Going to get in there in front of 20,000 people in the O2, which is an arena I've dreamt of fighting in, and I'm going to go to war with another man. So I'm very excited, and that's the good thing. We get to find out in 2 weeks on Saturday how it's all going to go down.
Now, the UFC Apex is a bit of a hotly debated topic amongst the UFC fans and fighters as well. Some of the fighters say they like it because they can hear their coaches clearly. A lot of the fans say they don't because it's not quite the same atmosphere. Obviously, your debut was at the Apex. How did you feel fighting there? Was that enjoyable, or do you think you prefer the big arenas?
I think I definitely prefer the arenas. Do you know what I mean? That's that when you visualize a win, you think about getting on top of the cage and the whole crowd roaring and cheering your name. That's the thing that we have in our heads when we see it. So I think, yeah, definitely would prefer an arena. I didn't mind fighting in the Apex. Obviously, I was on the Ultimate Fighter, and all throughout that show, we were training there, we were fighting there on the show. So it become quite familiar being there. Do you know what I mean? So I think that kind of maybe helped with like the octagon jitters getting in the UFC for the first time. It was all quite familiar because of the Ultimate Fighter and stuff like that, and it being in the Apex. But yeah, in terms of which one I prefer, I'd much prefer to fight in arenas from now on for the rest of my career.
I asked the same thing to Adam Cullen the other day. There's been in the last 6 months or so, there's been a slight change to the MMA unified rule set with 12 to 6 elbows and grounded opponents. Now, because of your fighting style with a lot of grappling exchanges, is that something you've been working on? Is that different types of strikes, different types of positions? Is that something you work on in training?
Yeah, definitely. We're quite innovative. I feel like we're keeping up with the times, and actually, Paddy's been really good with these new rules. Paddy will find ways to kick somebody in the head from wherever he is. Do you know what I mean? So he's been quite creative and actually come up with a few different variations of strikes that we can be throwing from these new positions now, where you can score damage. So yeah, that's been something we've been implementing as a team. Everyone's been working it, and you'd be stupid not to. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not the same. It's not the same game anymore. There's positions where you used to be all right, where now you can get kneed in the face, which is a fight changing strike. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we've definitely been preparing for those. Maybe you'll see some in me fight.
With the win in London, you'll be 2-0 in the UFC and properly broken into the company by then. Do you have any short-term goals for the end of 2025? Is it just this fight at a time, or what's your mindset?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think every fighter we do look to the future. Do you know what I mean? I have goals and aspirations. There's things I want to achieve, but in order to do that, I've got to be perfect each step along the way. So for now, the main thing that matters is getting the win in 2 weeks. Once I've done that, I can look onto the next thing and the next thing. And I think it can be a bit overwhelming maybe if you try and set, like for me right now, to say I'm going to be a world champion, which I do believe I am going to be one day. It seems like a very difficult goal to achieve. But then when you break it down step by step with this fight, and then maybe two more fights this year, and then another three fights next year, before you know it, that's you could be 6-0 within the UFC, and you're ranked. Then you know what I mean. You're looking, the title's not too far away. So yeah, I think having those big goals and then breaking it down step by step is important. So for this year, this is my main focus now. I want to start the year well, get off with a flying start, a big win in London, and then two more fights this year would be great. If I could have 3 fights a year for the next couple of years in my career and really build myself through the ranks, that would be ideal.
You say that. What do you think about the top of your division at the moment? I'd say the last 5 years or so, the UFC bantamweight division and probably the lightweight division have been known as the two most exciting in the company. The top of your division, obviously champion at the moment, Merab Dvalishvili. What did you make of the title fight recently against Umar Nurmagomedov?
Yeah, I think Merab's brilliant. I think it was a very high level fight, very closely contested until the later rounds where Merab's gas tank kind of took over, and that proved to be the sort of winning factor for him there. So Yeah, I think he's a great fighter. I think he's a very difficult man to beat. I think he's somebody you've probably got to put away, either choking him unconscious or taking his lights out with a punch to get the win over him, because he's just that relentless and that fit and condition that beating him over 5 rounds is going to take a real high level athlete. So yeah, very impressed with him, impressed with that fight, and I think, as you said before, bantamweight is one of the more exciting divisions, especially with the likes of Sean O'Malley floating around. Obviously, Nurmagomedov, Merab. There's a lot of big names. Petr Yan. Our top 5 is crowded by superstars, really, in each weight class. There tends to be a couple of guys who are big names, but our sort of whole top 5 is guys who are considered superstars, I believe. So it's exciting times, and I'm hoping that my career aligns with catching some of them. Do you know what I mean? I would like to think that in the next few years, when I'm up there, a few of them will still be around, and I'll be able to fight some of them. So it's that's an exciting prospect for me.
You gave a little bit of insight as to how you think you'd try and go up against Merab. Is that something you do? You do look at these top fighters and even if it's subconsciously think about how you try and deal with them?
Oh, 100%, yeah. I think if you're not doing that, you're stupid. Do you know what I mean? Because ultimately, that's where I see myself being. So I need to look at what they're doing and then assess my game against theirs and see realistically, if I got in there tomorrow with Merab, how would I fare? How would I get on with him? So you've got to be constantly doing that, especially if you don't have a fight. If you don't have an initial opponent for your next fight, you should always be working to fight the champion in your division. Do you know what I mean? Because that should be your goal. So if you've not got a specific person to prepare for, start preparing your game for the champion of your division. I think that's the best way to approach it. So yeah, definitely. I study the game. I watch all the greats, all the top guys in my division. I'm a fan of the sport as well. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I'm quite good at picking skills from people just by watching them, so I can see how certain people operate and maybe the way they move or certain techniques they use. And I feel like I'm pretty good at seeing that and then implementing it into my own game where it fits in. So that's a big skill in itself, I believe, and that's something I like to do.
Is there one fighter in particular you could pick out as saying that would be a dream fight in the next, what, 3 years or so, 3 to 5 years?
There's a few, to be honest. I've always been a fan of Petr Yan. When I was, sort of coming up on cage, or starting my pro career, Petr Yan was like the main man in the bantamweight division. So he's always been someone who I've looked up to. I like his style. That's a fight that I'd like to have at some point in my career. And then obviously Sean O'Malley, that would be unreal as well, to step in there with someone as big a name as him. How many eyes would be on that fight? It would be crazy. So those are 2 names that I'd hope I'd get the chance to compete against one day.
So stylistically, back to your fight, there's been some back and forths with next gen fighters with Caolan Loughran. Paddy had a little thing. There's been some words. Obviously, you fought before. What do you think of him and the way, the style and the attitude that he brings to the UFC?
What do I think of him? I don't know really. I'm not necessarily. I'm not hating on him. Do you know what I mean? I don't have any sort of hatred towards him. It is what it is. I think he's probably a little bit arrogant and he's got a bit of a big mouth, which gets him into trouble sometimes. He obviously had a back and forth with Paddy, and Paddy's someone who you don't want to be getting into a verbal argument with, because he's very good at chatting shit and winding people up. So he'll have your head gone if you try and win a verbal argument with Paddy. But yeah, it's not me, all that. Do you know what I mean? It's not the way I like to roll. So I'd rather stay out of all that and let me fight and do the talking. I think anyone can come on and sound good and talk and have the gift of the gab or whatever and say they're going to do this, they're going to do that. But ultimately, you've got to get in there and let your actions speak for you, I think. I would rather be a bit more humble and, just at the end of the day, you're going to get in and get found out, aren't you, at some point? That's the thing with our sport. So if you want to go down that route and talk a big game, this, that, and the other, that's sweet. But that's not how I like to operate. So
I have to touch on your teammates because for the next gen group, there's a lot of big fights coming up. Obviously, Liam Gittins, Luke Riley, Adam Cullen, Molly, yourself. None bigger than Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler. How's he looking in training, and what do you expect to come from that fight?
yeah, unbelievable. Paddy's do you know what I mean? He's the highest level fighter I've ever seen. Do you know what I mean? Or ever trained with in person. So he's looking brilliant. And I think Chandler's another good. I think it's a good matchup for Paddy. Do you know what I mean? I'm very excited for this one. I feel like styles make fights, and the way Paddy fights and his range, his kicks, his grappling ability, I feel like he's sort of pretty tailor-made to fight someone like Chandler who dips their head and weaves in and is going to look to close that range. I feel like he's either going to walk onto a big knee or a kick, or he's going to end up closing the distance too much and getting his neck taken, like you saw with Bobby Green as well. So very excited for that one. I'm hopefully going to be going out to Miami myself to watch it after my fight, if all goes well. And yeah, the rest of the team are flying. Obviously, we've got off to a good start this year. We've got Liam in Rome this weekend. We've got the Cage Warriors lads next weekend, Manchester. And then we've got me and Molly in London. And then Paddy sort of capping off the first quarter of the year in April. So it's going to be a very good start to the year. Yeah, we're going to get plenty of wins and just keep the momentum going that we've had for the last few years. So it's been nice. Everyone's been in camp together, working hard, and it's been a real good time to be in Next Gen. As it always is, it's always a good time to be in our gym. Do you know what I mean?
Last thing from me then, can we get an official prediction? Nathan Fletcher versus Caolan Loughran at UFC London on March 22nd.
Simple prediction is I'm going to win. Do you know what I mean? I don't like to say a round or this, that, or whatever. Like I said, when you get in there, anything can happen. But I predict that I'm going to go in there and get my hand raised. I've prepared well. I believe I'm better than this man everywhere. And he's not beating me in a fight. So I'm ready to go.
Nathan Fletcher, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Good luck in your fight.
Thank you, Elliot. Nice to speak to you, mate.